Afternoon, everyone.
Moderating this with me is my colleague Toko Firi, so I'm going to turn it over to her. We already have some people in the room. Welcome, everyone. Toko, it's yours now.
Oh, thanks, Christine. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Toko Piri. As Christine already told you, I am a postdoc in the School of Public Health and Health System at the University of Waterloo, but I'm also an alumni. I'm involved in research currently, and the focus is on the newcomer refugee experience in Canada in the nutrition and food security spaces. Okay, so our association is pretty new, so let me just let you know that the University of Waterloo African Alumni Association is a community-driven organization that aims to celebrate and support the career trajectories of University of Waterloo alumni of African descent. So we have a few housekeeping details that we need to go through before I hand over to Christine. This is a 1-hour session, and we're going to include 20 minutes of Q&A, which is questions and answers at the end. We will be recording the whole meeting to allow those who were unable to attend today to view it for themselves on YouTube. Please know that this is a very safe and inclusive space, so feel free, but also be respectful of others at all times. We'll ask you to mute, if you're not a speaker today, please mute your computers throughout until we reach the Q&A. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you will see a participant function. Please open it so you can engage with us. You can raise your hand if you have any questions at the end, but you also have the option to write your questions in advance in the chat section. So please, if you have any burning questions, go ahead and do that, but feel free to do that during the discussion. And we do have some social media links that we have posted in the chat. There's an email address, a Facebook website link, and also an Instagram link. And I think that's it for housekeeping. So it's over to you, Christine.
Okay, thank you for that, Toko. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christine Edet, and I'm also at the University of Waterloo, where I'm a doctoral candidate in public health. My research is really focused around the social determinants that affect women's health and well-being, with a particular emphasis on determinants that affect nutrition and mental health and safe work. So that's what I'm about the past 4 years and going forward into the future. I'm really excited about today's panel. We have been running a series of panels and conversations in our spaces as persons of African descent in the region of Waterloo. While we're primarily in academia, a number of us also have crossed academia into entrepreneurial spaces, business spaces, and a number of us also have questions about how to make this transition. And this is what this panel is about this afternoon. We have seasoned professionals, some of them alumni of the University of Waterloo, some of them alumni of other universities in North America, and we're inviting them to bring their perspectives and learnings about working in a North American space and translating all that learning to solving problems within this space and also on the African subcontinent. Even though many of us live here and now work here, the call of home is still very strong with us. So just understanding how we engage ourselves and work to build enterprises in our spaces is what we're about today. I'm really excited to allow our panelists introduce themselves. But before they start, I want to make a comment about an honorary panelist who cannot be here today, and that's Maya. Maya is the dearly beloved departed best friend of our panelist Chukuka Chukuma, who will start with self-introductions, and he can tell us a little bit more about why Maya is not here and other things that he's passionate about.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Christine. And it's so nice to have heard from you, Toko. I love when women are running things. It means that everything is going to be in order. But thank you so much for having us. I mean, Waterloo University is a school that is growing on us, and we're beginning to love, because this is our second event actually at Waterloo. My name is Chukuka Chukuma. I'm an investment banker, more recently an author and a film producer. Maya is my dog, which I have for 14 years. Inside joke with Christina and I. And when she had summarized my profile, she summarized all the speakers' profiles. In my profile, I had put that I have a wife and 3 kids and a dog named Maya, who I miss dearly because she's gone to dog heaven. And so when she summarized it, she left out Maya. So I said, I don't understand. Maya is it because it didn't say it was a child? Maya is a part of my Chukuma family. Why did you leave Maya out? So that's the joke about Maya. So yes, Maya is in dog heaven. She's allowed to call once a year around Christmas to tell us that she's fine and everything as well. In terms of background, I mean, I'm an investment banker. I run a firm called Racecourse Capital. I'm an entrepreneur. I only eat when I hunt and kill something. So I do a number of things. I play in the principal investment space, where we aggregate money to invest in businesses. My day job is Racecourse Capital, so we do that there. But we also advise businesses, especially infrastructure, energy type businesses. Sort of large infrastructure deals is what I focus on. And when I'm not doing that, I, like writing about random stuff. So it's so nice to be here. I'm sure as we get into it, we'll be able to share more. You're on mute, Christine.
Oswald, would you like to go next?
Hello, how you guys doing? My name is Oswald Osaretin Guobadia. I'm an entrepreneur who's currently on sabbatical from entrepreneurship. I run a business. Well, I'm on the board of a business in Lagos now. I have no dog. I have 4 kids. I do a number of things ranging from, writing, which is, we've written a book with some of you about. I'm currently working with the government in the technology space, trying to have some impact in that space for our country, Nigeria. I'm excited to be here today to have a conversation about entrepreneurship, which is one of my passions.
Welcome, Oz, and we may call you Oz throughout this conversation, right?
Certainly.
Good to have you with us. Uche, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you, Toko, and thank you everyone else who's on here, including Chukuka and Oz, my co-panelists. Thank you for organizing this. It's a pleasure to be here. University of Waterloo for me is home. I moved here. My name is Uche Onora. I'm a co-founder of an education technology company called Hitch. Hitch provides world-class digital resources to underserved students and teachers in African schools, starting in Nigeria, where I'm originally from. I moved to Kitchener-Waterloo in 2014. I have a young son who's on autism spectrum, and we moved primarily because of kids' ability, and that's actually how I found out about Waterloo. The funny thing is, when I got here, I didn't realize how big the tech ecosystem and entrepreneurship and innovation was in Waterloo until I got here. But the funny thing is, I'd heard about BlackBerry. I knew BlackBerry was a Canadian company, but I didn't even know they were from Waterloo. So it was interesting to see. I ended up going back to do my Master's of Business Entrepreneurship and Technology at Waterloo, and then co-founded the startup Hitch as a result of that. I'm also a coach at Conestoga College, which is a local college here in the province of Ontario. I provide programming and support to early stage startups in technology and the social enterprise space, coaching and mentorship to startups founded by people within the Conestoga network. I also serve on the board of Interact Matrix, which is a local interdisciplinary arts organization promoting fusions between art, technology, and different spaces, and also serve on the board of St. Paul's University College, which is one of the university colleges within the University of Waterloo system as well. My background has always been entrepreneurship. I've always been, as I say, I used to call it a hustler with a laptop until that became a bad thing when everybody started thinking about the 419 guys and everything. But I remember when people used to ask me, what do you do? I said, I'm just a hustler with a laptop. And essentially it's just about entrepreneurship. I've always been committed to solving big problems, especially as it relates to Africa and it relates to Nigeria in terms of the development space. My background is in technology. I originally got a degree from Delaware State University, information systems. So I've always had a bias for technology solutions. And that's actually where my journey with entrepreneurship started. So I'm happy to be here and glad to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's amazing how much, richness there is in your stories, and we're excited to delve into all of that over the next few minutes. I'd like to welcome again all our participants who have joined us. I see you, Nikos, Gifty, Shola, Elizabeth, Ayo, Blessing, Azuka. Welcome all of you. I'm sure there are a couple of people that I can't see on my screen right now, but I want to welcome everyone. I'm going to start with a series of prompts that will invite our panelists to share their experiences, insights with us. I'd like to encourage them to keep responses really succinct so that we can get the most out of the hour that we have available to us, but at the same time, not be afraid to delve into cogent points that would really help people who are interested in working in the spaces where you have conquered, to take their place. So I've read your book. Oswald and Chukuka have both co-authored an amazing book called In Pursuit. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. You can get an e-copy and read it. It's really passionately written. And in your book, you use the expression often that entrepreneurship is about creating value. And so starting with Oz and ending with Chukuka, I'd like all three of you to just kind of comment on what it means to you when you say entrepreneurship is about creating value.
Oz, you're on mute.
Oz, you're still not.
Aha, there we go. So value is basically how you define it, right? Is it value in monetary sense? Is it value in people? In the book, we try to set kind of a, not by actually poking you in the eyes, but we kind of lay it out in the sense that, you should find value in creating impact in other people's lives. And ultimately, if that's with a product or through charitable means or both, you ultimately never lose money, and you potentially gain monetary value in trying to create value in other people. So it depends on how you also measure value, right? So for instance, how do I measure how my company has been successful so far? I look at the people that we've employed and how their lives improve individually, right? So from year to year, you see the young guy who came the first year, and then year 3 or year 4, you see he's bought himself a car, and you see that he's now getting married and he has babies. So it's in that you could actually measure
there seems to be some problem with the stability of Ozzy's internet connection. We seem to have lost you, Oz.
How you've actually impacted measuring value. Yeah, Chuka, go ahead.
Yeah, just so you know, Oz, the internet is very it's extremely choppy. At the tail end of what you said, we got most of it, but at the tail end, So if you need to
Okay.
switch networks, please do so. But just to alert you.
Okay. It actually froze up. When I stopped talking, everything was frozen. I'm like, what's going on here?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So
Uche,
I'd
would you
say,
like to
yeah.
comment?
Sorry.
No, I was
Oh,
just going to invite
Chuka,
Uche to comment on the.
Uche, please go
thought.
ahead.
Oh,
Go
okay,
ahead.
okay. I thought Chuka was going to say something. Okay, okay. I think just to kind of build on what Oz said, I think focusing on creating value in a sense, not actually mutually exclusive to creating income, right? So depending on how you define the value that you're creating, if you're creating value in an entrepreneurial sense or creating value in terms of solutions to challenges or problems, invariably in a lot of instances, you will, or in some times, capture some income, whether even if it's a non-profit, whatever it is that you're doing, creating value for someone sometimes does result in income. But I think the distinction is that the focus on the creating of value is more on, like Oz was saying, the impact on other people or impact on society or impact on who it is you're creating the value for. I think the key here and the key distinction with entrepreneurship is figuring out how to keep creating that value, not just to create it once, but the repetitive process to make it sustainable for me. And so in that sense, whether it's the different pathways, to me, there's a diversity of the entrepreneurial experience that most people don't touch on. And I think Oz and Chukuka touched on that in their book, where they talk about entrepreneurship and the different modes, right? Ultimately, creating value in a sustainable way, I think ultimately will result in some income. And the focus on that, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but there's a distinction, I think, a subtle distinction in that sense.
Yeah, thank you very much, both Oz and Uche, for that. I mean, I think you guys have done justice to the point, but if I could add a few things, I think that the world has so many problems, and I don't think that we address entrepreneurship really from a solving problem perspective, because it's only when you're solving a real problem that people somehow that it leads to a transaction where people somehow now want to part away with some cash to give you. When I think of even the journey of our book, right? The book was written for other people. Books sometimes, at least in a Nigerian and African context, you're not allowed to write a book unless you're 80 years old and about to die in another week, and you want to kind of live some memoir for everybody to know, or you've made a ton of money. It's neither, I mean, Oswald is closer to 80 than I am, but it's neither the case that it's age that's sort of pushing us to writing the book, or the fact that we've hammered, as they say in Nigeria, made a lot of money. We just thought it was important that while we are still in the struggle, trying to make, ends meet and figure out how to, I mean, we're comfortable, but, grow our business and stuff, that it is in that time that you can write the best story, right? And it's in that time you can inspire people the most. Because the truth is, once you get past a certain point, you start to, say things like money is not important, and, you just have to focus on, and we didn't want to have so much cash that we lost track of the real struggle, right? We wanted it to be real and feel. So I'm mentioning that because in writing the book, it wasn't even about making money, but it was about creating value in other people. And hopefully along the way, there may be money made, but that was never going to be the driver. I remember telling someone that I've actually never taken a job because of money, and they like, why would you say something that silly? I said, no, I focus on the growth that I'm going to experience with the new opportunity. I focus on who I'm going to be working with and whether I like them, because I don't like working. I'm very real. So if I don't like you, or if there's an issue, then I'm not going to be a very good employee. So I focus on people that I like, that I share values with. Values are very, very important to me, over money. I've turned down as much as $1 million offer to go and work for someone, simply because I just didn't think they every time we spoke, they kept saying, won't you consider the job? It's going to be paying you $1 million. And I was like, no, but surely I'm more than just I'm more than just the amount that you want to pay. So those are some of the things I wanted to just add.
Thank you so much for sharing that. All of your insights are really precious to us. And as you, Chukuka, just, starting from you, because of that last comment you made about, going beyond a monetary price upon yourself, in the things that you've done, the transitions, the experiences that you've had, I'd like you to start by commenting on, start this next round of reflections by commenting on what it means to harness time. So there's a saying, friends of mine who work in the real estate space say, the best time to have bought real estate was 100 years ago, the next best time is now. So in terms of business and in terms of delving into entrepreneurship, how does timing function to advantage people or not?
Time is what is an interesting resource. It's very, very scarce. And the second the second that time goes away, that's it, right? It sort of dissipates into, you can never get it back. I've always been amazed about the concept of time, especially with regards to the current environment that we're in. Oswald is quoted, and we use it in the book, as saying that prepared people always seem lucky. And two of us have always fallen into that bucket. And as it regards time, again, using the book as an example, elections were coming in Nigeria. If you know anything about elections in any African country, one thing is guaranteed. You will lose between 6 to 9 months of your time, business, efficiency. Unless you're, depending on the kind of business you are, most businesses tend to do very little business in election cycles. So in terms of time, we actually knew that the federal government of Nigeria was going to give us 6 to 9 months of nothing happening in Nigeria, economic inactivity. And so we used that time and invested it, instead of wasting it, in building what you now see as In Pursuit, the book. When COVID hit, because we had already prepared In Pursuit, we had something to sell. We had something to do. And so we've been busy throughout this whole pandemic, at the same time when other people were kind of sitting down going, I can't believe nothing is going on. We're waiting for the world, for the new normal to start. So again, having had a mindset of, regardless of what's happening in the world, I will always continue to invest my time. That has allowed us to always seem like we're lucky, even though we're only just prepared and never wasting our time. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Uche, would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, so I think, man, there's a phrase now, timing is everything. It is. It really is. So if you're looking at it in the context of sub-Saharan Africa or Africa and opportunities, even in North America, I think there's an interesting thing when you look at the trends and what is going on. Of course, there's a big joke now that most of anybody who can in Nigeria is leaving and wanting to come to Canada, right? Or go elsewhere because of some of the challenges of what's going on economically in Nigeria. Some of this had already started a couple of years ago, but it seems like there's almost like an added urgency. But then when you look at that trend or what's going on, and if you dig deeper, you begin to see some opportunities that emerge, right? And so opportunities for business. So if you have a large influx of Nigerians or even Africans moving into Canada, Canada has set on its own part an ambitious target for immigrants coming into Canada, right? That creates an opportunity for a lot of solutions to some issues, challenges that come up that can create value for either of the society itself or the people who are moving or any of that stuff happening. Now, also for those who end up moving into Canada and they don't see or they don't get formal employment immediately, there's also opportunities to then look at what you can do entrepreneurially to create value. So all of those things that are happening are determined by timing. Maybe a couple of years before or after, it wouldn't have worked. If you look at, for example, something like COVID, which is the ultimate black swan event, right? Bill Gates and the other guys had been talking about this stuff, and that there was a possibility that a massive virus that was very infectious would come. It has happened, but you see that there are a bunch of different people, just like Chukuka explained, that have ridden that wave One, maybe because they were better prepared, not because they could forecast it, but because they were doing something productive that could leverage that situation, right? And so I remember, for example, in my own business as an educational technology provider, prior to COVID, trying to sell and tell people about education, digital education, or online and all of that was sometimes like banging your head against the wall. All of a sudden now, it's a completely different thing. And so that's the critical role that I think timing can play in terms of being able to spot opportunities and jump on those opportunities.
Thank you for sharing, Oswald. In your specific role, straddling enterprise and service to government, how does this work? How does timing favor or support your work?
So, I mean, you have to look at time as a partner, right? So I think in the book, we refer to this about being able to dance and so forth. I think a respect for time is a respect for the market. You know, you have to be able to position yourself ahead of the issue. You know, there's about to be a water shortage and somehow you built a dam, right? So you hear these stories all through time of people who did amazing things and it just seemed like they timed it right, or they created the opportunity, right? So is it that they timed it right or they created the time? So time is a very, very strong partner in your business, is really in there, and you really need to figure out how you use it. Either you're partnering with it or you are creating an opportunity at the right time, but it all stems from respecting time, right? Respecting time, and it starts from the very minute of it. Respecting time is in this minute, I'm going to do a number of things to move myself forward and not really wasting it. Now, the question you asked specifically was also a timing thing, right? You know, I'm in the infrastructure business, which is currently very slowed down. So if there was any time ever for me to take what I now call a sabbatical, it is now, right? So that was also a timing thing, right? So as Chuka just said, he said the first part. We wrote a book when the government decided they're going to do an elections, which means 6 months downtime. There was a whole argument and conversation around, should you release a book during COVID? Like, wait a minute, this is the best time where people are going to be in their homes and we'll be able to read. So our book has sold a lot of books just on the mere fact that we released it during COVID time, because a lot of people had nothing else to do but read it, right? Is this a good time to go have conversations with government and then realize that you could actually help them? Well, yes, because guess what? There's going to be a slowdown in the market, and all those businesses that you have lined up in your pipeline are not going to be realistic for maybe another 6 to 12 months. So this is the best time ever to go take a sabbatical from what you're doing and go engage government and trying to help government out. So time is something that you need to embrace and learn how to manipulate it. In essence, if you think about what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone and releasing that particular iPhone at that given time, that was manipulating time. We weren't ready for it, but he created something that we were now ready for in that given time.
Just a quick thing before we back to you, Christine. So I like the points that Oz and Uche made, but I want to talk about something that Uche mentioned. The news right now is that everybody's leaving. You know, a lot of Africans are trying to get to Canada, especially Nigerians, this and that. But what we actually talk about the move back, the concept of either migrating or emigrating in either direction in our book. Coincidentally, as many people as they are trying to get out, there are also a lot of people you talk to on this side that are trying to go in. So as an example, I invest in businesses, right? And one of the two businesses I'm looking at, one is Canadian owned, and the two ladies that run it are actually looking to leave Canada to go into Nigeria to set up their business. That's one business. The second one,
ERA.
Yeah, the second one is 5 Princeton grads, 5, okay? Have jobs at Goldman, Google, Jefferies, which is a small investment bank, and one other one I can't remember now. They're leaving, they graduated in 2018, and they're leaving their jobs to move to Lagos to go and set up a new business in this same Lagos that people are running away from. So I find that interesting because depending on where you are, when you said it in the beginning, Christine, there's a tug, there's an invisible cord that tugs at your heart when you're in the diaspora, telling you, telling Toko, I want to go home. I want you know, to be with my people and see, you know, do the things that you love to do and stuff like that. There's somebody just like Toko, same age, same everything, who right now, I don't know where you're from, Toko. Is this South Africa or Malawi?
Malawi.
Malawi.
I can't wait to get out of here. You know, I'm tired of eating ugali and the fresh soups and everything. I want to be in Canada, you know, in the cold. So there's always someone looking at the other side, thinking about green grass. Sorry, go ahead, Christine.
Well, Chukuka, the point you just made segues very nicely onto the next question, which is about comparing experiences on the African continent and in North America, which is Canada to us now. So in your, and I'm putting out the question to everybody, but I would like to start with you first. In your opinion, but also what you know right now, what are the spaces where there are opportunities for entrepreneurship for people to launch into in Canada and in Africa? Okay, so coincidentally in Canada, I've actually been advising a number of companies, about 10 small companies, less than $1.5 million in revenues for free, just to give back and stuff. And then 2 companies in the US. Canada, given the little I know about it, I haven't been, it seems to be a great place. It continues to be a great place for your film and entertainment. I think you guys are doing rock solid there. I think for deep tech, it's growing. I have a niece who just raised a couple $100,000 on a $2.5 million valuation in Canada. So I know that the startup scene in Canada seems to be quite good, especially for fintech, deep tech, and a couple of others. I think Canada seems to have some excess capital. So from a funding perspective, I think it's a great time for them to be like a fund of funds. So if you have capital, you can invest in funds that are, you know, going into places like Africa that have triple-digit growth and double-digit growth that basically you can never find in North, well, not that you can never find, but are harder to find opportunities in North America. So deploying capital into the space. So if I now switch to the other side, I'd say for Africa, Africa is very straightforward. It's about solving problems. We have, if you look at any of the SDG, Millennium Development Goals turned SDG, you know, goals, water, power, healthcare. If you go, you know, media entertainment, I love. So let me dive into that. In media entertainment, equipment finance, there's a need for our content, right? Our content is probably the only one left on the continent that hasn't been fully actualized. So there's a need for our content to go into Netflix and all these other streaming platforms. So if you're on the continent, you should be investing right now in studio capacity, in the actual equipment, the training schools that will teach, you know, people acting and hard skills, animation studios. That's just for media entertainment. Then you have so many other spaces, e-health, but even getting the internet to the kids, right? You take it for granted here, you already have cable in the ground and lots of Wi-Fi and stuff. On the continent, given what Uche is doing, part of the challenge is just for them to have devices that are cheap. And then when they have the devices, cheap internet, right? So a business that is able to aggregate much cheaper business, I'm looking at 2 of those investments now, that can aggregate much cheaper internet, basically crash these prices at least by 80%, okay? And get the internet to the people. Those types of businesses do phenomenally well. But there's also basic stuff like, you know, I'm a foodie, right? I love food. I think Africans, you know, there's always opportunities in food, I think. If you think of Canada, whether it's having a high-end Southern African food, you know, not because they have a lot of the mom and pops where people cook in their house and stuff like that, but like a high-end one they don't have, like yeah. So that's it. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. It's. Oh, that's very, very exciting to hear that there's a wide profile of opportunities in Africa. And to your point, I've heard people complaining that in our region of Waterloo, there aren't that many ethnic or African centric shops, or not shops, but restaurants that can cater to those who enjoy different experiences. So I'd like to pose the same question to you, Uche. Compare the African and Canadian experience in terms of startups.
So I think everything is kind of around what Chukuka had said. It's about creating solutions to problems. So I think in Canada, for instance, from my own perspective, and the thing I see is that there's a great, if you want to call it, disconnect between what people perceive as Canada and what the reality of Canada is, for instance, especially when you look at it from the flow of migration from outside Canada into Canada, especially by professionals that come in. And one of the things that I always see is that a lot of people have networks and contacts and resources that they've built up over time that they leave behind when they immigrate into Canada. So from that perspective, one of the things that I see is abilities to leverage the networks that they have from a base in Canada to do business with the continent, because that dovetails nicely into the need for Canada to diversify its own economic fortune. So if you look at the Canadian economy, a lot of it is built and integrated deeply with the US. And so naturally, when you're starting up a business, typically most businesses would look at Canada and then look beyond Canada to the US as a natural progression. Now there's also an increasing move towards China. But the one thing to me that is very clear that should be a natural progression in that debate or in that focus is Africa. And so who best to look at the opportunities in Africa than people who have come from Africa and then understand the context of some of the solutions that need to be provided. And Chukuka alluded to some of them. Now, if you look at Canada, and it was interesting that Chukuka mentioned media and entertainment in Nigeria and media and entertainment in Canada, there are a lot of strengths and opportunities that of capacity that Canada has that you can transfer even in the media and entertainment space, right? So that's one field. In tech, whether you talk about medtech or fintech or even edtech or any of the other tech verticals that solve some of the problems in the UN SDGs, Canada has a lot of capacity. But if you look at the Canadian market, it's what, 35 million people, 37 million people. It's a small market. It's a big country, huge, but it's small in terms of the market population. A lot of those solutions, a lot of those technologies can also find opportunities in Africa. So for me, whenever I look at the challenge, I'm always thinking about how can you use and leverage capacity and resources, because part of the challenge, one of the challenges that people face, even in Africa and in Nigeria specifically, sometimes access to capital, right? And so, yes, it's getting better, but it's still not where it should be. And sometimes you can align with organizations here that are trying to solve problems there and that you can then get funded through. So one of the examples I tell people, for instance, is that in the education space, in the employment economic opportunity space, one of the major institutions operating on the African continent is actually a Canadian organization called MasterCard Foundation. And so figuring out some of their funding priorities and areas in which they're interested can give access to capital for a lot of entrepreneurs looking to solve problems in those environments. And there are other organizations like that. There are other ones that are doing stuff in energy, oil and gas. Canada has a big oil and gas economy as well. From the Nigerian side, I think a lot of it is changing. There's still a lot of barriers around access to capital and resources. But I think an even bigger issue is beyond even just having the capital and the resources is actually being plugged in to networks where you have information and have insights, or what you call secrets, around which you can build entrepreneurial opportunities as well.
Thank you for a very insightful response. And finally, Oz.
Yeah, so Chuka and Uche have both given, sort of the lay of the land, right? So it's kind of the way you see opportunities and where the gaps are in both of those markets. And then the same thing applies for America as well. There's still gaps and still places where you can create something unique, right? There's no African restaurant. Like, for instance, the small town that I live in, my family lives in Delaware, there's a small Ghanaian store there and they do very well. But I think when it comes to Africa, right? And I just posted an article on the chat group for some people to read, which is just pretty much saying, what's your plan for Africa? It basically speaks to the fact that there's opportunities in everything, right? There's an opportunity to add value in almost every single sector that is you can imagine in Africa. And I speak of Africa both as a monolithic structure and also as a diverse and very very diverse, ecosystems, small ecosystems, large ecosystems, culturally and economically, diverse. So it now draws back to two things. One, what is your passion, right? What is that thing that you wake up thinking about, like, oh, I want to do this thing, and I'm going to do this thing, in Malawi. I'm going to do this thing in Gambia. It doesn't mean I'm even moving from the attachment of where you're from, right? I think we need to look at Africa as, it belongs to all of us, right? So I may want to go do, a cooking school in Malawi. I may want to go do something else in Senegal. And I think we have to start having that approach as Africans. We'll look at the entire African continent as a playing field for us to play in, because the truth of the matter is other people are, right? No people, governments look at Africa, and they've done that since the 1800s. Looking at Africa from its resources, being from its people, which is the most amazing resources that Africa has. Example, slavery, that was a people game, down to the things we have in our ground, right? So Africa is very blessed, from people down to natural resources. So as Africans who have gained education and you have experience and exposure, the question you need to ask yourself before you move on to the next thing is, what is your plan for Africa? And I don't mean Malawi, I don't mean Nigeria, I don't mean Kenya, I don't mean Ghana, I mean Africa, right? What is that plan that you have for Africa? And how do you test it? So one is, what is your passion? And two is, how do you learn that environment, right? It's critical that you understand the environment so you can be able to operate a business that's successful. So Africa is open for whatever great ideas you have.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Yeah, indeed. Amen to that. Lots of opportunities, lots of things that we can take advantage of. If this is, meaningful for you, if this is speaking to your heart, can I see a reaction? Can I get a thumbs up? Can I get an applause? Can I get, just something, a reaction in the chat from all of our participants? This is fantastic what you're sharing. And Oz, you were just speaking about, the spaces that we occupy, but then can I also have you reflect on, in any endeavor that we want to, get into, there are obstacles to think about, and there are challenges to overcome. And we often think about the entrepreneurial space as one that is rife with challenges. What has been your experience with engaging with some of these challenges? They could be infrastructural, they could be human resource challenges, they could be financial, even the technology, beginning from Oz, and then just, Uche and Chukuka, if you would take it after Oz has spoken, and just reflect on how you have engaged with and overcome challenges in your journey.
Africa is not easy, right? Nigeria is not easy. It's Chukana now says something, and there's this thing called VUCA, right, which was made in Harvard by some smart people, but we now call it VUCA +++, because Nigeria, Africa, offers challenges that just are not normal, right? VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? So this is part of understanding the market that you are trying to approach. You have to understand the levels of complexity and levels of volatility. When you look at volatility, for instance, in Nigeria, you look at the FX rate, right? So this is almost like we're playing an instrument, because we say it all the time now, right? So if you look at, there's a few memes going around that somebody said, if you invested $200 in, actually it was more than that, it was like $200,000 in 1980 something, and you looked at it now, it'd be $200. So that's the market. So knowing that that's the market as far as volatility is concerned, you have to go in with strategies, hedging strategies, to ensure that you don't lose your pants as you're trying to create value, right? You look at complexity. How do you ship something to Nigeria? How do you get it cleared? Is that opaque or is it transparent, right? How do you register a company? That got recently a bit more transparent, but is it opaque or is it transparent? The questions you ask along the way, that's complexity. Ambiguity, are the rules, is the rules bend? Can you bend it? Does it go this way? Is it a straight line, or is it how you saw it that day? You woke up this day, it is blue. You woke up the next day, guess what? The same piece of paper is green. So when you operate in that environment, you have to learn how to maneuver. You have to learn how to adjust yourself. You have to learn how to, hop and skip and do one-hand somersaults all at the same time. It sounds like I'm using colorful words to explain, but the truth is that, these things happen every day. Real examples is, you procure something or you close a transaction, for instance, you close a transaction and Naira is 360 to $1, right? But by the time you're executing the transaction, Naira is now 500 to $1. You just lost 200, and those losses cannot be recouped in any fashion. So how have you done your pricing to be able to accommodate, a 200, loss? It's not possible. There's no way you can do that and still make money. So a lot of those type of things happen in the environment. It does not mean it's impossible. It just means that you have to go in understanding that that's the environment. And the other thing we say, this is actually in the book where we talk about, BYOE, which is pretty much bring your own everything, right? So when you're going into an environment and you realize that you have to actually set up your own infrastructure and your supporting structure around yourself, electricity, power, water, all these things that you have to do to get your business set up is part of the things you have to understand as you enter the environment. And don't be shocked. There's a number of times when people come in to do X, end up doing Y, because in the trying to support this business, they've created something else. So for instance, you want to do eggs, you want to have the fowl and the eggs, and then you now realize a lot of people lose their chickens. Then next thing you know, you are the person now doing the medicine for the chickens. How did that happen? Right? So all of a sudden you're not doing chicken again. You have your chicken thing only has 10 chickens. You never grew it. But meanwhile, you're now a multi-millionaire because you're now making medicine for chickens and everybody needs it. So you yourself have to come and be very flexible, because the possibility of you shifting to a different business is quite evident. And that's why you have entrepreneurs in Africa or Nigeria that are into multiple things at the same time. It's not because they are greedy. It's because they are hedging and the opportunities actually exist. And once you learn, the core skill that you end up learning is that circumstance, you now find yourself doing a multiple number of things and being successful at them, because you know when the specialist skill that's really I think Chuka, you have that thing you say about the experience and exposure and what you know and what's coming up. It's not so much the knowledge base anymore. It's more about the experience of what's happening to some extent and able to maneuver through it.
So just on that, what I say is actually that vision is born in this current environment. And experience is, for the most part, it's not dead, but it's dying, right? We're entering such a new world that the skills required to make it as we go further are not the same skills that brought you here. So I'll stop there. I don't know whether there was any other questions you had.
No, okay, I even wanted to add some context to what you're talking about in terms of structure and obstacles, right? So from the Nigerian context, I think Oz has done a very good job of kind of painting what some of the things you face. But I think even here, it's also important to recognize that there are structural challenges to maybe being an African here and trying to set up a business, or even to do a business from here to Africa and all of that. Because if an institution or organization or country or community is set up in a certain way and you're trying to find the gaps and then do business in a way that doesn't necessarily align with the convention or thought, the conventional thought in that space, then you're going to run into obstacles, right? And so from my own personal experience, for instance, starting a company in Canada to serve a market in Africa was a tall order. It was very, very, very challenging. Even though we had support, even though we had access to resources that maybe other people wouldn't have had, it was a tough. It has gotten better over time. But I think one of the things to think about, even for members who are on here, especially those within the University of Waterloo or the Waterloo region community, one of the biggest things one of the biggest ways to overcome those obstacles is networks. At the end of the day, if you're plugged into the right networks, if you talk to the right people, you will begin to tease out allies and resources that could help you surmount some of the obstacles that you come across, whether it's from capital, standpoint of capital support, whether it's from the standpoint of mentorship, whether it's the standpoint of providing connections to initial customers and things like that. So ultimately, it's also to bear in mind that even in a market where everything is supposed to work in North America, there are obstacles. And if you align yourself with people who are also concerned about those issues, for instance, you're more likely to go further than if you try to do it by yourself. So sometimes entrepreneurship can be very tough. There's a balance between, there's a trade-off between grit. Yes, you can be gritty entrepreneur like Oswald was saying, but you have to also allow or calibrate, allow for an element of learning for the market to teach you and for you to adjust and make adjustments or pivots based on the circumstances that you see. And you should listen to those signals. You shouldn't just say, oh, well, the signal's coming in and I'm just going to ignore it and I'm going to be dogged. That's great and there's a time for that. But also you have to have the wisdom to know when to be dogged and have to exercise that grit, and then when you need to adjust to be able to take advantage of some opportunities.
Oh, how I wish we could continue with all the discussion, because you guys are a wealth and fountain of knowledge and wisdom. I have learned so much, but unfortunately we will run out of time and we need to go to the next section in the interest of time. Let me just let the forum know that please feel free to now switch on your videos. We want to see your faces. If you're in a space where you can switch on your video and be seen, please go ahead and do that. And let's have an interactive discussion time or Q&A. And I open the floor for the questions. I have any questions posted yet? Anybody can start.
So as Toko invited, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to speak your question. If you'd rather drop your question in the chat, please drop it in the chat and we'll read it out. So there's one question in the chat already, and this is going to, be addressed to every one of you. How do we as Africans in the diaspora leverage our diverse expertise? Just leverage it to accumulate a multiplier effect and facilitate greater success amongst Africans here and, on the continent, I imagine. And that question is from Azuka.
Is that for anyone?
So I would say,
yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just have people moving around in my house. So that's why I have to turn my video off. I have, so the question, like I asked Emma, is one thing I have seen, like I've been in Canada for a while and I listen to, all of you amazing people, like it's very, very good. I learned a lot, but I always ask that question, right? As Africans, so find like individually, we are all almost always doing our own thing. We are like kind of all drawn apart. Individually, we might be strong. But what I have seen with like other, let me use the word, like when you look at like maybe other races, is that there is this thing where people come together and kind of band together. And what I call it is the multiplier effect, where I will bring in my own expertise and you will bring in your own expertise. And before you know it, you find that what might take me 5 years to do, it's going to take the next person maybe 3 years to do. You see this in the Chinese community, see this in other communities, and you as a Black person is like, hey, it's not as if I am not as smart as these people, but they are somehow leveraging their expertise. And this is one thing I have seen again and again in an African community. How, or like can the panel maybe talk more about that? Like how do we help each other, right, to leverage that diverse expertise and overcome what I call the crab in the bucket effect. It's like one person is doing well and every other person want to hold the person down. Right?
So
we'll see about that.
So I understand what you're saying, and it's a real problem. But I think the very first step is to understand that it's actually a very false narrative, right? In our culture, if you look back to our culture, you realize that a lot of things we do, I mean, when I say culture, I mean African culture on the ground, a lot of things we do is very communal, and it goes down to even taking care of the sick. Recently I did a tour with an architect in my town in Benin, and we were looking at old structures from the 1400s, 1500s, and you could even see where they put the sick people. It was in the center of the house, and people, the process was everybody was taking care of that person. If you look at how we eat, the traditional way we eat communally. There's not one person eating. The only person that probably ate alone was the father, and when he ate, everybody was waiting to get food from him in addition, because he wasn't going to eat alone. So I think when we go back to that being our identity, I think the very next step is to counter it, right? So you've asked the question. I would challenge you that tomorrow you should get together with a group of people who are like-minded and intelligent and potentially have ability to develop ideas and come up with an idea and then think of Africa and execute on it. I think it's actually taking the action of doing it. So for instance, a lot of times people ask, why did two of you write a book? Two grown men wrote a book together. And if you read the book, it's just us bashing each other, in the entire book, and then talking about serious topics and trying to hide the serious topic behind laughter. Now, it was done in communal. We actually enjoyed the process. And we've, Chuka and I have been friends for, 15, 16 years. And even writing the book, made us even more friends, right? And it just goes to the point that two people can genuinely, get together and develop a product that they're proud of, right? So directly from how, the divide and conquer broken down into actually to today provides us for being our great selves. Now, I will point you to a podcast where these questions are asked, and I kind of answered it quite succinctly. There's something about knowing your identity that prevents you from becoming a slave. Like me, it's not possible. I'm a Benin man from Benin, It's not possible for anybody to ever put me below myself. It doesn't matter who it is. It can be the president of America. I know where I'm from. I know who I am. So I think when we start going to that unit position of understanding who we are,
So Oz is making, it's frozen again.
Right? That's what's happening. So, that sucks. Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Goes in and out.
It's choppy.
Yeah, it's really choppy.
So I'll leave it at that. Ultimately, if we start leaning back to our cultures, it will counter that narrative of we don't work together well.
Let me jump in just very quickly to add to what Oz said. In fact, that's the point. The funny thing is Africa is actually very, very communal in a lot of things that we do. But the truth is, because, and I don't know, maybe this is just my hypothesis, that I think part of the challenge is that because Africa overall is not doing very well economically, typically when you have an environment of where things are scarce, things are tough, the first thing to kind of give way is sometimes some of the things that bind us together, and that communal ethos in terms of trying to do economic opportunity together. But essentially, I think at the heart of what Oz is saying is that wherever you are, whatever community, wherever you find yourself, I think the first step is actually to building things communally, is finding people of like minds, right? So, even in the context of, I want to do things in a community or communally, you still have to find people that kind of align with some of the things that you're trying to do, right? And so that you can coalesce together, and then you can begin to build. And you find out that a lot of groups that are started, and a lot of communities that are started, often have like a core of people who understand and are driving some of the actions, and then at different layers, different people can then play and participate. There's an interesting concept that I came across in an article that I read last week, where it describes 4 types of people that exist in an organization and society. I think some researchers had done, called Simon Badley and Kim James had done some research on this. They talked about owls, sheep, and donkeys and foxes, right? And essentially it's a quadrant. You have on one side of it, you have people who are politically unaware, some people who are politically aware, and then on the other side of it, you have people who are game playing, who basically play games within the system that they find, and then people who act with integrity. Oftentimes, if you're going to try to build something that is communal and that has a large chance of success, you're going to have to align with people that can get the vision or the dream of what it is that you're trying to do to succeed. So even when you look at those communities that you're talking about that do things together, it doesn't necessarily mean that every single person in that community agrees or they all do things together. It's just that the nucleus of who is driving is aligned, and then people kind of join at different levels. So I think primarily, if you look at the African experience, we do have a lot of local organizations in the diaspora. We have different cultural groups and all of that. But then thinking about it from an economic development standpoint and doing things entrepreneurially, you're going to succeed if you have people aligned with your own focus or complement of skills or resources or vision of what it is that you're trying to do. And if you align with them, even if it's just 2 of you or 3 of you or 4 of you to start, and as you begin to network within the constraints of what is around you and the people who are there, you find out that eventually people will gravitate towards what it is that they have an interest in, and then they can now help you begin to build. And of course, with a certain level of success, it now brings more awareness about the methodology in which you're using to kind of develop that that trajectory.
Just before Chukuka contributes and we, as we wind down, I just want to invite reactions from our participants. A yes, a thumbs up, a celebration. Drop in the chat your one key takeaway. I'm going to be reading your comments. Your one key takeaway from our session over the past hour. I'm just going to invite Chukuka to think about, I see a question just jumping in. How do we maintain motivation as entrepreneurs to consistently deliver value in the face of the ambiguity, the complexity, harsh economic realities, some of those paradigms that you shared so insightfully about a few moments ago. Chukuka, please.
Yeah, by the way, I think that in the interest of time, given that you guys are running late on time, we don't need to have 3 of us answer one question. So to the extent that we've dealt it, we'll just keep going. That's the only reason why I'm not answering Azuka's point. But I think if you are an African that existed in Africa and did work there before you came here, then you actually have nothing to complain about because you've worked in a much more, the West has just caught up with Africa by having COVID. The West now is functioning in a VUCA+++ environment, right? Before that, everything was normal and they could predict stuff. And now there's just a little bit of uncertainty that's come into the system. But there's actually nothing to complain about because if you functioned in these lands of ours, which are really more frontier and emerging markets, then you're already equipped internally with the ability to survive in this environment. But that said, I think that faith plays, when there's so much uncertainty, faith is very important, right? Because you can rely on someone who is stronger than you, and you can rest your troubles on that person. I also think that there are various coping mechanisms. So you need to figure out what yours is. Mine, for instance, is laughter. Throughout this sort of this COVID, I have made sure that I stayed in a very light mood, right? The things I watch, I don't inhale Trump all day. I don't inhale negative news all day. I inhale love. I inhale,
very, very light spot.
My family that's around me. That's what I feed on. And so I haven't felt as toxic, right? Because those things that you take in are like toxins. So those are my things. I think things you choose to digest, read, work on. Oz and I have been working on our books and our families and our lives. So we haven't been as distracted, if you will, by all this noise. And a lot of it is really just noise. You have to know how to zone out on the noise. If you should be doing anything about your business right now, is trying to relook at your plans, restructure the business. I had a restaurant. We're going to be going down from 100 people occupancy to 65, even though the law says 75. Let me just assume 60, 65. what do I now have to do? Well, guess what? I have to change and start actively advertising on Instagram. Even though I claim to not love social media, I clearly have to find the 40% or even more through deliveries, right? So those are the things you should be spending your time on, not the noise of how many people have died every day and all that stuff. Just focus on the bare minimum, cutting costs, cutting your coat according to your size, not spending what you don't have.
Awesome. Can we just appreciate our panelists? Can we have a round of applause for our panelists, their energy, their intellectual capital that's been shared with us? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Margie, Gifty, Shola, Talatu, Blessing, Ayo. You finally turned your video on, Ayo. Did you? Elizabeth, good to see you. Nikos, thank you for joining us.
Go ahead, Nikos.
I do business with Nigeria. I am based in the UK in Scotland. I am Greek and I do business through Greece through some Nigerian friends. The presentation today was amazing, amazing and down to earth.
Thank you.
I wish many people could hear your presentation today. It would be so useful so many for people like me that they do business in Nigeria. I wish I had all that many years before. But yes, you are down to earth, like you mentioned before, transport, clearance, and all these things. I'm eager to order your book tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikos.
Thank you, Nikos. So the links to get the books is in the chat. I'd like to encourage you to follow us on our social media pages, our handles, Facebook, Instagram. They've been placed in the chat. Highlights from this conversation will be shared there. We've also been streaming this live on Facebook, so please get to our Facebook channel to rewatch this video and share it in your spheres of influence in your community. Let's share the message, broadly. Oh, thank you, Chukuka. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for, in spite of trucking through and engaging. Who would have known that you were in pain? Thank you so much. Toko, would you like to wrap us up? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Christine, and everyone, and to our panelists. Fantastic job, well done, and you have inspired us all. And I second what Nico said. This was what we needed, and thank you so much for your dedication. And Chukuka, may you get well soon. And to everyone else from the community, if you're tuning in from or viewing from abroad, outside of Canada, I wish you well, and we'll have more of these webinars in future. So watch this space, all the spaces that Christine mentioned, and also on YouTube, you can review these, or you can share the video of this webinar with your friends. And so, yeah, thank you from the bottom of our heart and our collective hearts.
Thanks for having us. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.